Welcome to Stream Gamers. My name is Raymond. This tutorial is to show how I create a simple airport in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 using the provided SDK. I'm going to go over a couple of tools that I use to get myself prepared and get myself ready, and some directory structures and stuff like that. You can do it how you like. This is just how I do it, and then we'll get into the actual creation of the actual airport. So the first thing is that I use is the this tool, ourairports.com, and I'll link it in the description. I'm going to be creating an airport in North America, in Canada, in the Yukon. Oops, click on Yukon. There we go. So you can see all these airports with X's and varying different colors. I'm going to filter some of this stuff out: helicopter pads, seaplanes, and closed airports. I'm going to filter that stuff out. I'm going to scroll in. My intentions is to create this airport. I've discovered that airport does not exist in 2020. I use PlanG in conjunction with this to determine which airports are in PlanG and have an ICO coded and so forth attached to them. So that leads me to PlanG. Move that across. We'll bring this in. So this is PlanG. I have spawned here at Watson Lake, and the airport that we're going to create is going to be over here. I've created a point or whatever in there. So I know that the airport is there if I've discovered it from there, the coordinates and so forth. So all I do is just right click and I create a user waypoint. In this case I've done so, so I'll edit this one. The user waypoint is considered to be an airstrip. So now we'll go back to this program and we'll show you how we gain all of this information, the latitude and the ICO code and so forth, if there is an ICO code attached to it. So we click on this, and let me just close all this stuff off so we can start from scratch. I right click on it, open new tab. So that creates this new tab. In this tab we have a bunch of information that we can utilize. Oh, I've clicked on the wrong one. That's the problem. Sorry, I've gotten distracted here. I wondered why that didn't line up. This is the one we want. There we go. So the ICO code CFY5, these are the coordinates, latitude, longitude coordinates. Be aware of that minus sign. That's very important to know that it exists. The elevation of the airfield is 3,250 feet, or 991 meters above sea level. The simulator deals in meters, not feet, but there's calculators if you want to move around with them. There's a Wikipedia page, so we right click on that, we'll open that up. Here we can see that the runways are 16 and 34. The runway length 3,000 feet or 914 meters, and it's gravel. And this information I use along with other bits of information. So I'll pull these off to the side and we'll get ourselves set up. So I've got that user waypoint created. You can see there's an airstrip there in PlanG. PlanG pulls its information from the simulator. And again, I'll put a link down for the download and so forth for that PlanG if you don't have it already. The fact that the aircraft isn't running isn't really relevant. You do need to have developer mode turned on. The way you get that turned on is you press escape. You go to general options, you go to developers, and here is where you turn it on and off. You do not have to get out of the sim for it to be present, but you can turn it on and off at this point. You'll have to hit apply and save, and then back and resume, and here you are. Right. So I want to move my aircraft to where I am, from where I am, which is Watson Lake. And I'll show you where it is. It's up here somewhere. Just back out just a bit more. There. So I'm here and I want to move my aircraft over here because you have to have your aircraft in the location that you're creating the airport. It makes it easier. So the advantage with PlanG is once you've connected it, it shows your aircraft. You just right click on the user waypoint and move aircraft to this user waypoint. It's going to fall out of the sky and put itself there. And it'll be an approximation depending on the distance you do it. So what I do is I zoom in and I can see I'm just off center of the runway, and this is important to me because I want to have a relative location to where the coordinates say, and where the airport and everything else is. So in this screen, it showed us the coordinates, and I've positioned that waypoint with those coordinates. So I know that's where this site suggests that the airport is. And in true form, there is an airport there. There's just no ICO code for it that you could navigate to it and start there. You could fly to it and land on the runway and so forth. Right. Onward and upward to the next step. So I am now in the approximate correct location. We are in the Yukon, and so you're seeing all the white. It snows in the Yukon, and the snow comes early. So we're going to put a runway in here. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to turn our camera into the developer mode. Now, the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you how I do set up the directory structure. So the airport ICO code is CFY5. So in my Yukon folder, CFY5. I want that capital. CFY5. So I've created a template for this, but I'm going to show you where the SDK templates and everything else exist. So they exist after you install the SDK, and you get that from clicking on here and going here. When you install the SDK, you will have to restart the sim in order for the SDK to be picked up. But where the template will be for you is in your C drive, Microsoft Flight Simulator SDK, samples, simple airport. So this is the package that you want to copy and move over. I've created my own package that I use for my own purposes, but this will work. I've just set it up so that I name it differently and so forth, and I'll kind of explain that. So I'm going to go back to where I've created my templates. So there's my template for my airport, and I'll just copy this out. That thumbnail picture can be found in package definitions, content info, so I believe is what it is, and you'll get that thumbnail. And that thumbnail is important here in a bit. So I'm going to go back into Canada, we go back to Yukon, what was it, FY5, there it is, and paste. So that's our templated package. As I said, your definitions, oops, I guess I'm wrong about that, sources maybe. I believe it is in definitions. I've just removed it because I've put it here. So I'm going to pull that to the side over there. Now we're going to start the airport setup. So tools, project editor, project, new project. This needs to be browsed to that folder that I created in my Yukon folder, the CFYS folder. So click on this and let it get there. Back up, Canada, Yukon, CFY 5, right? 5, yes. So we'll go into there. It just needs to know where this folder is. So we select the folder. There it is, the project name. I always put the ICO code for the project name. Now keep in mind, you may be creating an airport that doesn't have an ICO code. You can create ICO codes however you like, but remember or keep in mind they have to be 4 digits, letters, numbers, not symbols, but letters and numbers. So you can create them however you want, and I have my own naming convention if I'm going to create one off in the middle of nowhere where one does not exist or there's no ICO code. But in this case, we have an ICO code. So we create the new project. The title, so the title will be the ICO code. So that is CFY5 space. Now, there's going to be a couple of things here. I'm going to show you why I do it the way I do it, and this is just for me and what I do, not for you. I use a program called Package Manager to install scenery, aircraft, and so forth into the sim. So if I look in here, up here, I've created this airport, Big Sand Lake Airport, but I have no ICO code to associate that. If I looked in the sim, what would I type in there to find it? So I've elected to now start putting ICO codes plus the name of the airport, so it's easy for me to see. That's just my own personal thing. So, and I'm getting the name of the airport from here. So when I look at this, this is the name, what they call the airport, Pine Lake. We could call it airstrip, call it airport, call it whatever you like, but they've actually named the airport Pine Lake. So I copy this, shove that off, and I paste that in there. The creator is me. It's a handle I've used for a long time. By wires. So the company name is an abbreviated name of your company or your media, whatever you want to call it. FBW stands for Fly By Wires. We are Fly By Wires. I fly with that group. I'm a part of that group. And we're not to be confused with Fly By Wire, the creator of the A320. We are Fly By Wires. You can look us up at flybywires.net. And I'll put that link also in the description as well if I can remember to do that. But here's the setup. This title, the creator, the company name, those are all things that you can decide how you want to do it. This is just my naming convention. Next, now we want to create an airport, so we can do airport, visual effects, or a customized version of it. In this case, this tutorial is for airport. So we go next. We are not going to override an existing airport, but if we were to take an airport that existed in the sim and the ICAO code, I apologize, that's a very difficult thing for me to say. If we wanted to modify that one, then we would say override an existing one, but we don't want to. We're creating a new one, and so here is the code CFY5. And the airport is Pine Lake. I do not put the latitude, longitude in here. That's my own personal thing. But if you chose to, you could, and you could get that right here. There's your latitude, longitude. Make sure you take the minus sign. So you could simply just pop that in there, and that would locate the airport. But I'm going to locate the airport based on where my aircraft is. Create airport. Now we want to click on view and bring up the inspector. The inspector is this window here. I want to click on this blank, and that's the thumbnail that I talked about earlier. Your thumbnail will be somewhere else. Your thumbnail likely will be in C, and there, samples, simple airport, package definition, my company, content info. There's your thumbnail, and it's there now. It's linked. Pardon me. So the next thing we want to do is we want to click on this little arrow there and expand it and click on scenery, and you notice the inspector window has changed. We want to click on the asset directory, the three little dots. A browse window will come up. So within that package that you were in, I'll go back to it now. Scenery, Yukon, down here somewhere. This one, right? Y5, that's right. So within the package you have a scene folder. That scene folder is where all of the information will be stored in. Pertinent information will be stored in. Select the folder, it changes the path. The next thing is we want to make sure that we're in developer mode, and as long as we are, when we click load in editor, it will give us a bird's eye view of the area. Now, in developer mode, there are some keys that allow you to navigate and move around. So your W, S, A, and D keys are allowing you to kind of move it around like this. Your number pad, 4 and 6, rotate either direction. Your number 2 and 8, pivot either direction. So that's how we'll be navigating around. Now, when I look at the airport in here, I can see this river that's right there. There's the road, there's the runway, and there is a roadway there as well. It's clearer, it appears to be clearer here in PlanG. So when we look at PlanG, I can see there's a roadway, there's the runway, and there's the river. So I want the river or the runway to be between the road and the river, closer to the road. There's the road, there's the river, there is the exact coordinate where the airstrip or the run, or not the runway, but the airport resides. That's the coordinates, but the airstrip is on this side of the road. So there's a couple things that we're going to kind of go through here and kind of explain a little bit about how and why I do what I'm doing. I try to keep them as close to realistic as possible. You see this bend in the river and then the straight. I'm going to zoom into my aircraft. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my aircraft around because I want to have everything orientated the same way it is on PlanG. So I'm just going to rotate this thing around. And that gets me, in a close proximity to the same orientation. And so that bend you can see is not quite 50% of the runway. It's a little further back of the runway, and the runway kind of ends here and kind of starts here, and so that's what I'm going to try to replicate. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I like to get it as close as I can. So this bend and this bend, whoops, and then this is kind of where the runway ends. It kind of ends here, and it kind of ends here. So this is kind of where I want it to be. I go to scenery, I go to objects, I click the object type, I go to Polygon, I click add, I click scenery, and this appears, and you see on my cursor is a little red plus sign. So I hold the control key down, which is the left control key down, and I click once, I zoom, I go back, way back over here to where I think the runway ends, which is approximately here. Click again, and my final click is a double click. So that's approximately where the runway is. This is called a polygon, and the polygon's purpose is to smoothen, but most importantly to remove shrubbery, trees, and buildings that you don't want there. So for example, we've got the polygon selected, we go to properties, In the Properties tab, you can exclude all. This is kind of to talking about buildings and that kind of stuff. There's a number of bits in here that I don't use, so I don't know what they're for. I use vegetation, and I use this exclude all. So if there was a building, an erroneous building in here that I didn't like the look of it, or I wanted to replace it with a different looking building because I know the building looks different, I could go exclude all, and anything in that polygon, all buildings will be taken away. There are no buildings, but there is vegetation. So vegetation, I want all of the vegetation. You're seeing vegetation in there now, all propagated vegetation. I want it all to go away. I move that to 0. And any trees that are inside of here will go to ground level. So it'll look like grass and that sort of thing. Now, if we had tall trees to deal with, oops, let's say over here on the approach, let's say we had a bunch of tall trees stacked in here. I could extend this polygon to include this, or I could just create another polygon and get rid of these trees. And the same would go for the other side as well. I could just go over to the other side and say, well, there's vegetation, rocks, whatever is there that I want gone. I could just extend the polygon, or I could create another polygon to include this vegetation that I want gone. So don't worry about the fact that it's maybe going over top of the road a little bit, because this polygon is only there to remove vegetation, and it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to expand this just a bit out. And again, it doesn't matter if it goes over top of the water, because it makes no difference. All I'm going to do is just kind of expand it out a bit, just to give myself a little bit more room to place my runway. Right. I save it. Pop-up window comes up. You can name this file whatever you like, but just remember, or just know that there's two files. There's the shape files, there's the airport files. They have to be named something different, otherwise the one will overwrite the other. So for me, I always name my shapes file like that, because I can look at this file and go, what was that file? Oh, that's a Polygon file. Now I know what that file is about. So I save it. Boom, got that done. The next thing is we're going to put the airport in here. So again, we go to Object, click the Object Type drop-down, click on Airport, click on Add, click on Scenery Editor. The airport shows up. This, what I do with this is I typically will put it somewhere in the center area of the polygon. Doesn't have to be exactly in the center, but somewhere's in the center. Of course, we could put it on top of the waterway, but that wouldn't make sense. So I'm probably going to just kind of place it kind of there. You go now into the properties window. Now, if these windows aren't open for you the way they are for me, you can click on View while you're in the Scenery Editor. You can click on View and you can open them all up. I recommend having Objects, Property, and Gizmo open. Material Editor as well, but those are the windows that I recommend having open because you're going to use them all. I don't ever put a display name in, but that's personal preference. You can put it in, but you do have to put the ICO code. So CFY5. This window you have to, and it will tell you if you put your cursor on it, you have to, once you put it in, you have to press Enter and Tab to get that to stick. If you just tab out, it'll disappear on you every time. The region name is usually, I usually pick it from here somewhere. I gain some information from here. I may zoom out and see what's, in the proximity. Let's say there's a town or a municipality or a county or whatever that I can draw from or pull from. If there isn't, okay, then what next can I pull from? I'll look at this and I'll go, well, geez, this is a government airport. Its location is in Pine Lake. It seems like the region would be Pine Lake. So in that case, that's what I'm going to label the region is Pine Lake. Country is Canada. State is Manitoba. City, there is no city because we're not in a city. The airport name is again Pine Lake. Now, I always put a star in here, and you know that in Sim 2020, when you click on the world map and you're looking for something, you can see stars, and those are highlighted things. Those are things that are supposed to draw your attention to it. It would be easier for you to find this in the grand scheme of things by putting a star in there. That's the reason why I do it, because if you don't, it just becomes this little speck on the map, and there's a million little specks on the map. Which one is the one that you just created? So that's the reason I do that. That's, again, personal preference. That's how I do it. The next thing is we want to save after we create the airport. This is going to create an airport file. I always name the airport file the name or the ICO code that is that I'm creating. Be sure to, when you type that in, because remember we've got these files that we created, be sure to click in here so that you don't accidentally or inadvertently pick on one of those other ones, because then you'll overwrite it and you'll have a problem. So just click on the blank space, click save. The file is now saved. And if we look in the package under scenery or under scene, we see there's my Polygon files and there's my airport file. And that's so it's very important. If you accidentally clicked on this name and called it this, you would overwrite this file with the airport file, and you need to have the airport file and these Polygon files. So that's next, and you'll see there's a tree that's being built here, and everything will be in here under the scenery editor as you place these things. So the next thing is we're going to place a runway. Now we kind of sort of know that the runway kind of is from here to here, and so that's kind of where the runway is, and I may extend these polygons just beyond the runway, but that's for a later thing. I want to put the runway in now. So I go Object, click on this, click on Runway. I'm not going to pick a runway that it is, because the reason for it is when we look at, we'll show you the other screen. We'll bring this over. So in here it says the runways are 16 and 34. The issue that is being had is either 2020 has got the geographical location or orientation, not so much location, slightly wrong, meaning the road and the river may be running on a slightly wrong angle. When I compare this view to Google Earth, it's correct. So the assumption is this is correct, and 2020 is slightly off angled. And I think that's a byproduct of we're way off in the beaten path. I think when you get more to major centers, bigger townships, and that kind of stuff, it's done better. But out here in the middle of nothingness, it just isn't orientated exactly correctly. So, and the reason, again, if I tried to place a runway using heading runway 16, you assume 160 to 165. So if I did that and I clicked on runway 16, and I clicked add, and I click scenery, and then I go to here in the properties window under configuration, and I set this to 165. You can see, look at what happens to the orientation. Let me get zoomed in on that a bit. Look what happens to the orientation of the runway. So 165 does not work. Now we can click on this little green dot and we can move it and we can reorientate it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the roadway as the guide of which way the runway will be facing. I'm going to try to make it, sort of parallel to the runway, to the road, I mean. And I'm going to click the runway to click off of that little dot, and I'm going to, click the runway, and I'm going to move it over a bit. I'm going to kind of place it kind of there. Now, Here it said it was 914 meters, and the runway is gravel. So down here in the properties window, 914 meters. Okay. And so we have a negative here, and this is the thing I don't care for, that negative. So we're going to click back in, and we're going to take this and we're going to rotate it around. Like so. And you'll see now we're actually got a positive or a proper runway heading, not a negative. I don't know if that really is terribly important. I don't like it. So we'll just make sure that we're sort of parallel to the road. Doesn't have to be an exact science. That gets us close. So we now know that the runway is 9 degrees. So we are going to pick 09. That's going to be our runway. And it'll give us the reciprocal of that 09 as well. In the properties window, the configuration area, I want to change the width of the runway. I'm probably going to make it about 30 meters wide. Maybe not right, but that's typically what I do. I'm going to scroll down, and under material, you can see the surface is considered to be asphalt. We're going to change that. So up here, under material editor, we're going to double click on here to highlight that asterisk, and we're going to type gravel. And now you're going to see, I'm going to put a check mark in here for preview. You're going to see we have taxiways that are gravel, runways that are gravel. We have a number of different types of gravels that you can use. I'm going to use the runway gravel because that's what we should use. It calls it runway gravel for a reason. So I'm going to click on that, and then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to click where this material runway asphalt is, and we're going to click on it, and it'll put gravel here. This doesn't change until we go back to scenery editor, and there we have it. Now we have a graveled runway. So there's our runway. It's sitting there. Our runways are 09 and 27. Or one final other thing, and I'll briefly go through this. If you were putting down runways that were asphalt or concrete, and you wanted to have markings, you could use this here. There's an array of different markings that you could use in here. This one obviously won't have that. Terraforming, I'll save for another conversation. Lighting, so if you wanted to have center lighting, edge lighting, you could put center low lighting, and you could put high edge lighting. We're not going to do that on this strip. I suspect there is none. Pavements we're not going to talk about. Approach lights we won't talk about. ILS, you could put ILS, but clearly this one doesn't have an ILS. Runway start, this is an important aspect. So we click on the primary start, and if you look, it placed one of these things down. Now this is where the aircraft will start. If you just type in the ICAO code and click start to fly, it's going to position you to wherever this is. So we grab that. I've grabbed something not right. All right, there we go. Why won't that move down? That's bizarre. Well, let's do this. Let's try that again. May not have been on the runway itself. Okay, so runway, edit. There we go. Try to get kind of there. And we're going to scroll in, and I'm going to show you. You see that little green arrow that's there? That's the direction in which the aircraft is facing. So we want it to face as close down the center of the runway as possible. So we click on Gizmo. Again, if you don't have Gizmo up, view, and you can turn Gizmo on. And you have to be on scenery editor for that to be the case. So we click on rotate. You'll see there's a green line there. If that line is not visible for you, you move on the numpad the 8 or the 2 to make it more visible by tilting the camera. And you can see that now it's way more visible. So you click and hold and turn that until you're kind of facing down the center of the runway. Back to translate over here in the properties in the Gizmo window. Back to the properties tab. Remove the check mark for primary start. Put it in secondary start. And you'll see there's another one. We'll drag that one kind of down over here. And we'll zoom in. I think my camera is tilted a little off there. There it is. So we'll zoom in a bit, and you can see the green arrow is there. Back to Gizmo, back to rotate. Grab the green line, rotate till you're center-ish. Back to translate in the property window. And your runway is in place, ready to be taxied on and so forth. One other thing I'd like to put in, I'm going to put two more items in here. Under objects, a Windsock, add, back to scenery editor. The Windsock you could place 2 of them in, and I'm going to. So I'm going to have one kind of sit right there. Back to objects, back to still in Windsock, click add, back to scenery, there's another one. I'm going to place another one back up over here somewheres. You could just put one if that's what you like. I'm going to put 2 in. The other thing that we're going to do is we're going to build a small little apron. We're going to just build a small little apron right here that will connect to here. So for the meantime, I'm going to actually move that out of the way. Objects, click the object type, click the apron, click default, click add, click scenery editor. We now have a little red dot. This works the same way as the Polygon. Hold the left control key down, click where you want to start it. I want to start it there, and I want to go there, and I want to go maybe there, maybe there, maybe there. And then I'm going to double click. And that's going to finish it. I don't like that one, so I'm going to highlight it, press the delete key, and make it go on. Now, these points are movable. You can click on them, and we can push them out a little bit. We can click on this one and push it out a little bit. Maybe not quite so far. So there it is. There's our apron. We want to change the material of that apron. We go to properties. We look down into properties and we see taxi concrete. We go to material, and we're going to use, let's use, which one do we want to use? Let's go here. Let's look at this. Aircraft carrier. What? Material. All. Asphalt. User asphalt. Well, let's type in asphalt. There's the T. Going to have the preview here now. There's so much of this in here that you can look at. There's a darker version. There's a weathered one here that I'm looking for specifically. This one. Let's put that one in. We've got it highlighted. Click on it. It doesn't change yet until you go back to scenery editor. Boom, there it's changed. So we got an apron. Now we're going to move that second Windsock back into location. There it is. And we'll just put that on the corner right there. So our airport is it's complete. One final thing that we need to do is we need to save the scenery again because we put the apron in. We need to go to the projects directory under project editor, save the project. Once the project is saved, we need to click on inspector. We need to go over here and click on this, which is just above scenery. So we click on that. That changes the view of this window. It gives us a build package. So we click on build package. Now, for some reason or other, there's a small little window in behind this window. So on your taskbar, if you put your cursor on your taskbar where your flight simulator is, you will see the console window. Move your cursor up to the console window on the taskbar and hit X to it, which will close it. And here's that window that I'm talking about. We'll hit OK. The package has now been saved. We can close this all down. So we go close, close, close. We go close. We take ourselves out of developer mode. We're back in the cockpit on ground in the snowy Yukon. We now get out of the sim. And I'm going to show you the package. So in that folder that we created, which is this here, let's get out of there. Yes, back to here. So the package that you want to put into your sim resides in packages. Just a note. My computer is running Windows 11, so some of my pop-ups in Windows may look a little different than yours, but it functions just the same. This is the package that you want to move to your community directory if you're using that method of doing it. If you're using the package manager, you have to zip this up. It has to be a zip file. And all you do is you just simply click on the install tab and drag it and drop it. Click install. And if we look for Pine Lake, there it is. It's installed, ready to go. Excuse me, ready to go. I won't take you back into the sim to show you that it's there because it is there and it takes a fairly long time to reload the sim and you don't need to see that. This is how you create a simple airport. There's a lot of other tools that you can use in the SDK to put buildings and towers and lights and all of those other things. And I've seen some people do some very amazingly creative things with the SDK simple airport builder. But this was just to show you the steps that I use in order to get an airport on ground that I can actually go to, and it'll allow me to fly it. So that's the end of that. My name is Raymond. This is Stream Gamers again in association with Fly-by-Wires. It's flybywires.net. I'll link a bunch of stuff in the description of the video so that you're able to see how and get the tools that I'm using to do this with. Have yourself a wonderful day, and I look forward to doing the next video. Bye-bye.